So demos. Okay. So the first thing that you need to do is creating this virtual wind tunnel. Well, this is basically a box which can be created, but in this case, you can see that I have this weird shape. It looks like a trapezium. The cross section looks like a trapezium because I was trying to do it in a bit of hurry, right? So when I set it up, you can see that I have all of this in a single part. So by the way, this software is Converge CFD. The software is extremely powerful for handling complex geometries. So that is why, I'm choosing this. So here you can see that this particular model has been prepared. This particular model has been surface wrapped. It's a technique for surface cleanup. And that is why there is small deformations. Does the shape of the wind tunnel affect the result? Absolutely. Now, in this case, it will affect because my wind tunnel is very small, Sindel. If my wind tunnel is pretty large, then it should not have any effect. Even if it's cylindrical, it should not be an issue. That is the whole point behind wind tunnel. You're flowing air over the car or whatever the vehicle is, and your boundaries, your walls don't play any role in it. So an ideal wind tunnel can be any shape. What would be the width? So the width should basically be at least maybe 6 to 8 times the width of your car. The other thing that you can do, Bishwajit, is you can do a half model. So that is one thing that people do. Since flow is going to be symmetrical, but that assumption is not going to be true when your yaw angle is not non-zero, right? If your yaw angle is 0, then you can just simulate one half of the car and say that you're going to get the same result on the other side. That is what you call as a symmetry boundary condition. But that is not going to be applicable when there is a yaw angle, meaning the car is tilted like this. So then what we do is we go through the process of setting up the materials, setting up the simulation parameters. So here is where we say, for example, what type of solver we are going to use. And this is where understanding CFD helps, right? So for example, there's a pressure-based solver, and obviously I have something called as density-based solver, and there's the transient solver. Which solver do I use? Well, those choices would make a lot of sense if you know CFD. In this case, I would probably go with a density-based solver, right? You can also do transient, but that is not going to be efficient. In this type of applications, using a density-based solver makes sense. Then, so then you have to talk about simulation parameters. What is the start time and what's the end time? How long or how many iterations for which you have to run the simulation? Well, that depends on the results. So for example, here I'm looking at the mass flow rate at the outflow boundary, right? I'm basically running around 162 kgs per second of air. And you can see that the mass flow rate has converged, meaning the flow has traveled from left to right all the way, and it has reached a steady value. This basically tells me that around 15,000 iterations, my solution would converge. It is one way of looking at convergence. Typically, people just look at residuals, which is not a good idea. You definitely have to look at physical quantities to make sure convergence has been achieved. Then you worry about boundary conditions. So the boundary conditions for external flows are quite simple. For example, the car body, it's a wall. Now the boundary condition, there's something called as a law of the wall. Now this is something that is not native to Converge. ANSYS Fluent, Star CCM, everyone uses this. This has to do with turbulence modeling. Since that would be kind of out of scope for this workshop, I'm not talking about it. But you need to set this up correctly. If you don't set this up correctly, your results will be wrong. At the inlet, what I'm doing is I'm providing a pressure boundary condition, right? I can, instead of pressure, what I can do is I can specify the mass flow rate or the velocity, doesn't matter. But here there is a concept of specifying the number, specifying the boundary condition directly, which is called as the Dirichlet boundary condition, and specifying the gradient, which is called as the Neumann boundary condition. If you have to understand these correctly, you need to learn CFD properly. At the outlet, I'm just providing a static pressure. Now this is, since it's a made up case, I'm just giving a made up number. The reason why I'm giving a pressure smaller than 1 bar is because, obviously I know that there is a wake region there, so the pressure should be lower. So that's why I'm providing that value. As far as the wall, I'm using a symmetry boundary condition for the wall, right? This is one way to do it. The other way to do is to use slip boundary conditions for your wind tunnel completely.